is up, guys, and welcome to another special episode of Guarani Vision, the first ever podcast dedicated to Paraguayan football in English. As always, I'm Roberto Rojas, and joining me are my two great co-hosts, Ralph Hanna and Maria Britos. And today, we'll be focusing on one of Paraguay's rivals in these October World Cup qualifiers for Qatar 2022 as they take on Bolivia in La Paz. Very tough game for any team, not just Paraguay. And here to talk about the Bolivian side is Bolivian football and cricket expert Tim Venables to discuss what is going on with them. So, Tim, thank you so much for coming on. It's a real honor to have you. I know you're also a big fan of the show, so thank you for always supporting us. I just want to jump in here real quick and get our conversation started to talk about Bolivia. Obviously, the team under Cesar Farias is currently on 6 points. Already they played Paraguay in the away to in Asuncion, a 2-2 draw, the first time Bolivia ever got a result in Asuncion, and now they take on them in La Paz. And obviously we're also speaking literally 24 hours removed from their 3-0 loss against Ecuador. They also have to play against Peru on Sunday as well at home. So I just want your thoughts on how you have viewed Bolivia so far in these qualifiers, in these games that we've recently seen, just your overall take on how Bolivia has been doing so far.
Well, thank you. First of all, it's a great honor to be here. I've been watching this intently since you started, basically because me and Ralph are soulmates in watching and going to football here in in Paraguay until Ralph emigrated. But it's a real joy to have your show and to be able to watch it and to be able to tell people back in England to watch it, because people are very interested in football in this neck of the woods, but obviously they have the Spanish limitation, so they can't really get enough coverage. And moving on to what you were asking about Bolivia, I think that it's sad in a way because they really had this vision of actually trying to do something, and the president of the federation, a guy called Cesar Salinas, sort of stuck his neck out and proposed that Farias be hired for a lot of money, because Farias does cost a lot of money. To put it in context, he makes almost twice as much as Scaloni, the Argentine manager, and they really decided to try and do a project, and it was working more or less well, in the sense that he understood the Bolivian mindset and he was working with young players, and they were actually doing some good. But then unfortunately, due to COVID, Salinas died, and because Farias cost so much money, they can't really fire him, but he doesn't really have the support anymore of the federation within Bolivia or the other clubs. So it's almost like he's out on a limb and he's just making the best with what he can. I mean, I'm sure you're aware the most powerful team in Bolivia is actually Bolívar, and their owner is Marcelo Claure, who Ralph will of course know, who was running the Inter Miami team with David Beckham, and David Beckham just bought him out. But this Claure has basically declared war on the federation in Bolivia, and so it's very hard for the federation or the national side to do anything. So it's like Farias is trying what he can to try and do something, but without support, it's just very, very hard. And we saw, like yesterday in Guayaquil, they were just outplayed, and I just think it's a chance wasted as far as they're concerned, and it's just going to be another case of what could have been, really. Now, in terms of how I think that will happen now with the game that's coming up with us, I think the Farias has talked a lot about changing the side, but I've been looking at the lineups in the last 7 or 8 games, and I don't really see that there's going to be that much change, to be honest with you.
That's what I was going to ask Tim. And firstly, talking about Tim and I and our friendship, the first game we actually went to was Bolivia against Paraguay. I remember at Luque Stadium. It was a friendly at the Feliciano Cáceres. Must have been like 2011, I think, or 2012. But going in, go to him.
No, I was just going to say that it was the last game that Toro Acuña played, and they let him go on for the last 4 minutes, so he got his 100th cap. And I think he was like 42 years old or something.
Yeah, and going into that, I mean, we've known each other a long time, and Cesar Farias has known Paraguay for a long time as well. So we're talking a lot about Farias, manager of Bolivia now. He's faced them already in this World Cup qualifiers, but he also faced, I would say, one of the better Paraguay teams, which was when he was manager of Venezuela. I remember that big clash in the Copa America semi-final back in 2011. Do you think that gives Bolivia a bit of an advantage that you have someone like Farias, who's also worked at Cerro, and a lot of the Paraguay team at the moment come from Cerro Porteño as well, so he probably knows quite a bit about the players as well?
It's interesting you say that, because I was thinking back the other day. Do you remember the 2-2 draw here? He actually, the way that they set up to score those goals was almost to exploit Paraguay's weakness at the back, because they weren't putting crosses in to like try and win the header. They were putting it like 4 or 5 yards further back so that Martins or Arce could shoot at goal. And I think they missed 2, and then Martins scored the other one. So in that sense, you can see that he really has a sense of how to play with our weaknesses. Now, considering the game that's coming, I don't know if I'm jumping the gun with the questions, but I think that Berizzo, the way that Berizzo set us out away, like in Uruguay and in Argentina, I think that can really work against Bolivia in the altitude, because they try and wear you down, like trying to make you run, trying to wear you out. But if Paraguay managed to put a blockade up and at the same time have people with speed at the other end, like Almiron, then I really have this hope that we can get something out of the game.
That was going to be one of my other questions is, so that's how we think Paraguay will play, in that the kind of defensive counter-attack style that Berizzo's employed. How do you think we'll see the Bolivia team set up differently to Ecuador, or would it be quite similar, knowing the limitations they have in terms of players?
Well, you never know for sure, right? And I mean, but I was looking at the side from last night, and they played Lampe, the Sagredo brothers, Hakim, Jusino, and Quinteros at the back. And I reckon that he'll drop Quinteros. Then they played in the midfield. They had Céspedes, Justiniano, Ramiro Vaca. And I reckon that they will add Erwin Saavedra, who is the Bolivar captain. And then they will have Martins and Henry Vaca up front. Now, there is one thing. I'm not sure if you're aware of that Juan Carlos Arce, who was the Bolivar captain until last year. And he is very good at playing as number 10, but he's 34 and he's got a sore ankle. So I don't know if they'll risk him. But aside from that, I reckon that's how they'll play. I reckon they'll play 4-4-2.
Hi, Tim. How are you? Thanks again for joining us. And for listening to us as well. We really appreciate that. We need all the support that we can. But, I wanted to go back to the topic about Bolivia and the federation and the mess really that's been going on with them. And I wanted to get your thoughts about the future of the Bolivian Federation. How do you see them in the future? Obviously, they're already in the bottom of the table, and for the World Cup, it doesn't look like very positive. But in the near future, how do you see them handling this?
Well, it's an interesting question. Look, we could get into a social demographic study here and go on for hours. The thing is basically that Bolivia constantly has conflict. It's the football now is in the biggest conflict since the last one. And the country, in terms of football, it has 3 heads. it has the league or the first division, which is in Santa Cruz, based in Santa Cruz. Then they have the FA, which is based in Cochabamba, and they have the Football Association, which is in La Paz. Salinas managed to sort of get some kind of consensus and put them all together under his reign. But now that's all fallen apart again. And so it's very hard to get any kind of consensus or way forward. And I really don't see how, in the short term at least, they can sort this out. And as long as that happens, there will just be an almost kind of tribal warfare, if we can put it that way. It's, you know how Paraguay never, if we ever have a Paraguayan as a leader, we always tend to start fighting. It happened with Chiqui when he took over from Tata. And it's like we need a foreign leader who everyone will marshal behind. And it's a bit like that there, because the only time they won the Copa America in '63, they had that Brazilian, was it Dalma Vilma or someone as the manager. And the only time they got to the World Cup was in '94, and that was with a Spaniard called Oscar Gorta, who wasn't even involved in football. He was a psychologist, a psychiatrist, who sort of managed to get together the football with working with their minds and getting them into a successful mindset. Now, until they can find some way of channeling that again, I don't really see any hope for them in the medium or the long term. And Farias was a good opportunity in that sense, but I don't know how it's going to end up. It doesn't bode well at the moment. And at least in the short and medium term, I don't see them really being a threat in terms of qualifying for the World Cup, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and obviously looking at it as a whole, I think it's going to be very interesting that, heading into this game, Paraguay definitely need that kind of result. So, but before we get into that, Tim, I just wanted to ask, how do Bolivia really traditionally view Paraguay? I mean, looking at the matches that they played in the past, obviously they're close together. They did play recently in the Copa America, but do you feel the perception of the Bolivians, be it from fans, players, coaches, whatever it may be, towards the national team?
They like us, they respect us. I think they see us as their kind of cousins. And I remember in the '98 World Cup, I was living there, and obviously it wasn't like here, but the amount of support that Paraguay had because of Chilaver and the defense was like real. It was genuine. And I think that they respect us and they see us as a kind of equal rivalry, because for them, they've got big brother Chile next to them. We've got Argentina and Brazil. So it's almost like, in that sense, we're almost more like equals, but we can play. And I think it's become, in a way, for them, important to try and beat us, because if you look back, Paraguay were the second team to win in La Paz in the term of the qualifiers. But now, in recent history, they've beaten us in the last 4, and it's almost like got important for them, like a game apart. Like for them, beating Argentina is like winning the World Cup. But now beating Paraguay has become more necessary or more important.
Tim, and I wanted to go a little bit more on Farias' plan for this, for the team. I saw that he's apparently was planning on using, since the call-ups were so many, he was trying to divide the amount of players into 2 groups, from what I've heard. One for the home games and the other one for away, which was against Ecuador. And how do you think that's gonna work? Because you obviously need to know how your players work, and as a manager, and you need to see if you have like a set team, you want that team to win. How do you think that actually works? Because if you have a team, the away team, that actually works well and plays well and gets winning games, would you use that in the home games?
That's an interesting point. And the thing was, coming into these games, he actually talked specifically about dividing the groups into two and having one to go to Ecuador and try and fight for a draw, and then for the home game to have a different set of players. But now that it's come down to it, the team that he used in Ecuador is basically the same one that he's been using at home, except from, I think that he wasn't using Quinteros at the back, and he was using Saavedra or Arce as a sort of 10. So I don't see that there's, I really don't know. Maybe against Peru, he'll come out with 11 different players and leave us all speechless. But going on the history of what I've seen until the moment, he's basically used the same side.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in all of this, in really this big encounter, I think, for Paraguay. And, to close it off here, Tim, and again, thank you so much for coming on. We do have to ask all of our guests this and put you right in the spot. Your prediction, what do you think happens in La Paz between both Paraguay and Bolivia?
Well, history isn't with us at the moment, but as I was saying before, I think Bolivia's second only defeat there was to us back in 1973. And then we drew 2 games after that, and then we've lost the last 4. I think if we go there with a mindset of we can win, and then pressure, and I think quite easily we could come away with a win. And I'm hoping against hope that we will. But analyzing it coldly, I probably think that we'll probably draw.
Ooh, and that would be a great result for Paraguay if they're able to get the win over there in Chile as well.
Yeah.
So that puts them still into that fight for the World Cup, and we'll definitely have to see what happens in the altitude. Obviously, a lot of things are going to be at stake at this one. But Tim, thank you so much for coming on. I think this is a great way to close the show. So for myself, Roberto Rojas, Ralph Hanna, and Maria Britos, thank you so much for listening to this special Bolivia preview episode of Guarani Vision. See you soon.
Anytime.